Hi there, Saturn class. I've brought us to Epic today for a book that I'm going to share with you. So I'm going to read it in two parts. You'll hear a part today and then a part tomorrow. It's to do with our topic because this week we're going to look at the history of Native American tribes, and one tribe in particular being the Iroquois. You can see the word Iroquois just here. It's a strange word, but that is the pronounced Iroquois. Now, the story we're going to read is Hiawatha and the Peacemaker. As I say, I'll read it to you, but you can follow along. I have assigned you the book in Epic, so if you go to Epic, you'll be able to read it as well. So it's called Hiawatha and the Peacemaker, and it's believed that Hiawatha and the Peacemaker originate from the 14th century before the Europeans came to America. And the Peacemaker was a spiritual leader, and he had powers, and he used his powers for peace, hence the name Peacemaker. Unfortunately for him, it's believed that he couldn't speak particularly clearly, and not many people could understand him, so he had to choose Hiawatha, who was a gifted speaker and a very, very strong man, to share his message. And together they journeyed across what is now known as New York State. And if you think back to a couple of weeks ago, you studied New York State, you did a bit of research. So they journeyed across what is now New York State, and they united 5 nations of the Iroquois tribe. So the Cayugas, the Senecas, the Oneidas, Mohawks and Onondaga. They were 5 tribes that needed to be united because there was much fighting going on, much war, and it wasn't a very pleasant time. And Hiawatha, poor Hiawatha, he actually lost his family in the battles and the wars and the fighting. And one specific person, one specific chief of the tribe was to blame, and that person was called Tadadohu, and he was particularly violent and particularly horrible. But the message of the book is really important for today, because the great law that Hiawatha and the Peacemaker and the tribes came to decide upon has lots of meaning for today, because the way America is governed today is called a democracy, where people vote for their leaders, and it was much the same after Hiawatha and Peacemaker had united these tribes. They pledged peace amongst the tribes, and today those tribes live as a 6-nation tribe called the Haudenosaunee, which we'll also learn about as well. So I want you to sit back and listen to the story, and we will find out more about the tribes as the week goes on. So I'm going to have part 1 today. Here we go. Hiawatha and the Peacemaker. It's by Robbie Robertson, and the pictures, the illustrations, are by David Shannon. A fierce scream echoed through the woodlands. Was it a dream? An eerie steam crept up from the ground, and the smell of burning pine filled the air. My blurred vision came into sharp focus. Everything I had ever known had been burned to the ground. My wife and 3 beautiful daughters had been killed in battle. Everything was gone. Only one man was capable of such horror, the evil chief, Tadadohu. I took shelter up the river. I had only a small fire and a place to sleep. I dressed my wounds with leaves I gathered from a bush. Then days, then weeks went by, consumed by anger and hunger and sleeplessness. I could think only of revenge. So this is Hiawatha, and he is angry and full of thoughts of revenge. He wants to get back at Tadadohu for killing his family. The sun rose early one morning and burned the mist off the river. It was as if a path had been cleared for what happened next. A blinding reflection came off the water. and from it a man paddled gently towards me. As he reached the shore, I realized the reflection was caused by the sun hitting his hand-carved white stone canoe. "Who are you? Why have you come here?" I asked. He answered only with a smile and handed me a string of wampum shells as an offering. We stood quietly, observing each other, and then he spoke softly, stumbling over his words. I know of your pain. I know of your loss. I carry a message of healing. I have come to tell you of the great law. Fighting among our people must stop. We must come together as one body, one mind, and one heart. Peace, power, and righteousness shall be the new way. I considered his words, but I didn't believe him. Our people governed only through fear. I had never thought peace among our tribes was a possibility. The man spoke again, to travel with me to the land of the Mohawk, and let us spread the good work. As you can hear, my voice is quiet and my words are difficult to understand. I know that you speak with power and confidence, and that your voice carries straight to the heart. I need your help, my friend. I need you to help me carry this message. So, there's the Peacemaker, and he's asking Hiawatha to help him carry the message and spread this great law. I agreed to travel with him and help carry his message. And so I, Hiawatha, came to tell the story of the great Peacemaker. I stared at his stone canoe, bewildered by its ability to float. But we paddled off, and with every impossible moment that the canoe glided across the water, I became more of a believer. When we arrived at the land of my people, the Mohawk, we were greeted warmly. The chief and the elders were summoned, and we gathered in a circle. A few clan mothers looked on with curiosity and concern. The Peacemaker closed his eyes and placed his hand on my back. Somehow he had the power to move his message through me. I began to speak his words. "Peace, power, and righteousness shall be the new way," I said. "We must join together. All nations will become one family. Our people shall have one body, one mind, and one heart. This is the message of the great law." The clan mothers nodded in agreement, and with a sense of relief spread over me. But then the war chief spoke. "We respect your message, but we cannot join you," he said. "How can we know if your words are true? Tadadohu is too strong, too violent. Our people must be prepared to fight." The Peacemaker quietly stuttered. "The great law is more powerful than any one man. We will return with proof that our nations can join together." As the Peacemaker and I travelled toward the land of the Cayuga, he spoke to me of healing through forgiveness. My mind, still filled with hatred, and my heart still filled with the pain of my loss, could not comprehend this. When we arrived, we learned that the Cayuga tribe had been devastated in an attack by the Tadahu and his people and his warriors. My mind was flooded with images of the battle that had taken my family. Rage filled my body. I turned to the Peacemaker and yelled, "We will never be free!" In an attempt to soothe me, the Peacemaker asked me to sit with him and the Cayuga Council. He looked deep into my eyes as he spoke to the people. "I do not see defeat," he said. "What I see is a passage to a new way of life. Join me, and together we can spread peace rather than war, love rather than hate, unity rather than fear." The Peacemaker placed his fist over his heart. A feeling of strength and trust ran down my spine. With new hope, we headed toward the great hill to see the Seneca people. The Cayuga chief followed us in his canoe. Together, we paddled as one nation. We were met by 15 armed braves. For the first time, the Peacemaker showed signs of worry. We were surrounded by warriors and led to the centre of the Seneca village. The Seneca chief approached the circle and the guards closed in on us. With a wave of his hand, the warriors lifted their spears. But then he nodded, and the guards drove their spears deep into the dirt. The Seneca chief sat down and told us that the wind had carried our message from the land of the Cayuga. The Seneca people wanted to learn about the Peacemaker and the Great Law. "We will all perish if we continue this violence. A change must come, and the time is now. Alone we will be broken," I said. "But together we are more powerful than the greatest warrior." The Seneca chief trailed us in his canoe, and together we rode as two nations. Guided by the moon, we trekked through the forest to the land of the Oneida people. We were halfway to the camp when the snap of a stick was heard through the trees. Suddenly the earth between our feet gave way. We hit the ground and were then engulfed by a giant net. The Oneida chief stood towering over us. "I've spared your life," he declared. "Why would two chiefs and two strangers be so foolish as to enter our territory in the darkness?" His men dragged us through the dirt and bound our hands. The Peacemaker explained that we had joined the Cayuga and Seneca nations in the name of peace, but his words had no power with the Oneida. Then the Peacemaker turned to me and said, "Tell your story, Hiawatha. Tell us of your great loss." I spoke of my pain and of my hatred for Tadadohu. I told the Oneida that my wife and 3 daughters had been killed by the violent world we had created. But as I spoke, I felt something come over me. Forgiveness. I had not been able to save my family, but on this journey I had been able to forgive myself. I began to understand the meaning of the Great Law, and I turned to the Peacemaker and placed my fist over my heart. With a knowing nod, he smiled. A warrior approached, and he untied all of us, one by one. Rather than feel the anger that had consumed me, I now remembered the joy of my family. I was joined by the Cayuga chief, the Seneca chief, the Peacemaker, and lastly, the Oneida chief. Together, we travelled as 3 nations. The time had come to return to the Mohawk people with proof of our message. When we arrived, they were impressed to see 3 chiefs with us. The clan mothers had a glowing look of approval. But the Mohawk chief told us that word of our mission had travelled to Tadadohu. "His evil is too great," he said. "Your message will only bring harm to our people." Angered by his lack of faith, the Oneida chief pressed the sharpened tip of his staff under the chin of the Mohawk chief. "We no longer use violence," said the Peacemaker as he reached out and lowered the staff from under the chief's chin. The Peacemaker led us to the tallest oak that towered over the Mohawk River. "I will climb this tree," he said, "and your men shall cut it down, but I will not perish. The river will catch my body and carry it to safety. Then you will know that my words are true." The men chopped down the massive tree. It crashed into the icy waters, and the Peacemaker vanished. I stood silent, stunned by this foolish stunt. I feared the Peacemaker had sacrificed himself at a critical point in our journey. An elder clan mother approached the circle of chiefs with 4 younger women by her side. "This man has come with a message of peace and unity, but you greet him with closed ears and closed minds," she said. "You reject Tadadohu, but you behave just like him." She looked at me. I could feel her sympathy for the death of my daughters. A tear ran down her cheek. "Let us hope the Peacemaker is alive," she said. "While you sharpen your weapons, I will pray for a miracle." The Mohawk chief was transformed by her words and nodded. The other women stepped back to console her, and we all walked quietly back to camp. When we arose in the morning, smoke from the river's edge caught our attention. We hurried down to find the Peacemaker sitting by a fire waiting patiently for us. The elder clan mother draped a blanket across his shoulders, and relief spread among us. Filled with emotion, the Mohawk chief agreed to follow us in his canoe to the land of the Onondaga to confront Chief Tadadohu. Together we paddled as 4 nations. So we're going to leave the story there and come back to it tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed it so far. We're going to find out more tomorrow. We'll meet Chief Tadadohu.